The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to listen to Jesus. But the Pharisees and the scribes began to complain, saying, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." So to them, Jesus addressed this parable. A man had 2 sons, and the younger son said to his father, "Father, give me the share of your estate that should come to me." So the father divided the property between them. After a few days, the younger son collected all his belongings and set off to a distant country, where he squandered his inheritance on a life of dissipation. When he had freely spent everything, a severe famine struck that country, and he found himself in dire need. So he hired himself out to one of the local citizens, who sent him to his farm to tend the swine. And he longed to eat his fill of the pods on which the swine fed, but nobody gave him any. Coming to his senses, he thought, "How many of my father's hired workers have more than enough food to eat? Yet here am I, dying from hunger. I shall get up and go to my father, and I shall say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son. Treat me as you would treat one of your hired workers.'" So he got up and went back to his father. While he was still a long way off, his father caught sight of him and was filled with compassion. He ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. His son said to him, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son." But his father ordered his servants, "Quickly, bring the finest robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Take the fattened calf and slaughter it. Then let us celebrate with a feast, because this son of mine was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found." Then the celebration began. Now, the older son had been out in the field, and on his way back, as he neared the house, he heard the sound of music and dancing. He called one of his servants and asked what this might mean. The servant said to him, "Your brother has returned, and your father has slaughtered the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound." The older brother became angry, and when he refused to enter the house, his father came out and pleaded with him. He said to his father in reply, "Look, all these years I served you, and not once did I disobey your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat to feast on with my friends. But when your son returns, who swallowed up your property with prostitutes, for him you slaughter the fattened calf." The father said to him, "My son, you are here with me always. Everything I have is yours." But now we must celebrate and rejoice, because your brother was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found. The Gospel of the Lord. A scripture commentator I once read suggested that instead of calling today's parable, as many do, the story of the prodigal son, a more apt title would be the story of the prodigal father. Well, that suggestion led me to look up the word prodigal in the dictionary. I found it interesting this past week that when I asked a number of people, even students of theology, if they knew what the word prodigal meant, very few really knew for sure. Some thought it meant repentant or forgiving. Neither meaning, however, appears in the dictionary, which proposes two very different definitions of the word, one negative, one positive. Prodigal can mean either exceedingly or recklessly wasteful, or extremely generous. So let's see which definition fits the point of Jesus' parable. Let's see who fulfills it, the younger son or the father. Now, on first reading, this parable may appear to be a story about an exceedingly, recklessly wasteful younger brother who loses everything and who, when forced to tend pigs, of all things, decides to return home and hope for the best. Note that the son decides to return home not particularly because he's contrite about what he has done, but because even the servants eat better there at home. Note that there is not a syllable about "what I have done is terrible" or "I have offended my father." Not a syllable. The only motive is, even my father's servants eat better than I do. The son then rehearses his little speech that he will give to his father. And so the younger brother returns home to an understanding, to say the very least, and loving father who throws a wonderful party in his honor, thus bringing the story to a wonderful climax and conclusion. Right? Wrong. For in fact, we know that the story continues. The real climax, and hence the real point of the story, is yet to come. The elder son, the obedient son, the hard-working son, the self-righteous son discovers that his recklessly wasteful younger brother has returned home after losing his share of the inheritance, and that his father, acting as if nothing had happened, throws a party in his honor. The elder son is furious. How could my father be so foolish, so outlandish, so ridiculous, so helplessly irresponsible, so unfair, so prodigal, so generous toward that good-for-nothing brother of mine? It's not just. It's not fair. Now comes what the whole story has been leading to, the all-important last part of the story's climax, the conversation between the elder son and his father. That elder son, full of bitterness and anger, says to his father, "I have worked and slaved for you all my life. I've obeyed all your orders, yet you never threw a party for me in my honor for being a good son. But when this son of yours, after having squandered his inheritance and living an immoral life, comes back, you welcome him with a party. It's not fair. It's not just." "My son," replies the father, "you are with me always, and all I have is yours. This brother of yours was dead and has come back to life. He was lost and is found. We have to celebrate and rejoice." End of the story. So what is this story about? If the climax of the story means anything, then this parable of Jesus is less about the exceedingly reckless and wasteful younger brother than trying to fathom what we can possibly mean by the Father of Jesus, who is a God exceedingly generous in bestowing love and forgiveness, grace and mercy, and how different our God is from us, because we often think of God in human terms, in terms of justice. But this parable reminds us, as much as we might not like it, that our God, our Father in heaven, thinks not in terms of justice, but in terms of pure, simple, absolute gift of himself. God thinks in terms of love. And so if you say, "That's not fair," God will say, "Yes, that may be so, but who's talking fair? I'm talking love." Now, how many of us have had similar experiences? Think of the sibling who sacrifices everything to care for an elderly parent, only to find out that all the children received equal amounts from the estate. Or that sibling who assumes responsibility for the family business when some siblings just want a share of the profits. Or the sibling who lives a carefree life only to reappear when the options run dry. Isn't resentment their due? Or We might think of those who have made it the responsible way, working diligently, staying clear of trouble, paying taxes, wondering why the poor should receive assistance. Some wonder why undocumented immigrants and refugees partake in the benefits of our society. The working poor get a living wage. Addicts get another chance. Such ways of thinking frighten me. I dread becoming small, hard, and joyless, like the Pharisees to whom Jesus is addressing this parable, a parable for us all. When our love turns to obligation, our prudence gives rise to harsh judgment, success breeds contempt, and our heart of flesh turns into a heart of stone. Today, St. Paul urges us, be ambassadors for Christ. Be reconciled to one another. Be reconciled to God. Then we can celebrate and rejoice, for we who were dead have come to life again.